What started off as a simple first drive review of the Scorpio Classic soon turned into a three-way fight with the Scorpio N and the XUV700. We saw the Classic lock heads with the Big Daddy N, but now it was more serious against the sophisticated XUV700, right from how they look. Well, on the outside, the XUV700 sure has the most sophisticated look. Buyers looking for a suave, urbane crossover are likely to gravitate towards the XUV700. It doesn't come across as burly like the Scorpio N due to its shorter height and more horizontal stance. And it also gets elements like flush-fitted door handles and distinct LED headlamps.
Parked besides the XUV, the Scorpio is evidently more butch and burly and has a toughness seen on ladder frame SUVs. However, the interior too is a point of contention, and like last time, I made sure to start off by getting Jay to sample the third row first.
It's actually not bad.
Headroom is tight for me, so I can only imagine how bad it is for you.
Absolutely. I mean, my head is touching right now. Space though is not bad.
Yeah, I'm surprised. The space actually is not that bad. I mean, there's decent enough foot-room.
Yeah.
And yeah, sure, you're seated on the floor, but then, yeah, it's not too bad in terms of
And these
support.
seats can go ahead, right?
I mean, they can recline a bit forward, but not to slide forward.
Okay. But I think that still should be fine. For short distances, I don't see this as a problem. AC vents.
Cup holders, 12-volt socket, and you can even control the blower speed from here, adding to the comfort. Not too bad, but since we have an option, let's just get out of here.
The Scorpio though was evidently smaller.
So like the XUV, only this side flips forward, that side just folds flat.
This is already looking a bit narrow.
Yeah, it is definitely not as comfortable.
And even to get in, it is quite a bit of a climb. Oh boy, 100% this is narrow. This is not good. I mean, we saw this with the Classic.
Yeah.
But it's more pronounced, especially after you sit back to back with that car.
Absolutely, your feet are rested much closer to you, so you're seated in a knees up position. Headroom, I think I'm okay, huh? I think
No, absolutely not. No, I'm completely, my full head is touching and
these headrests are poking into the nape of my neck.
no AC vents, no blower controls, and no reason to be here as well. So let's just quickly go out.
However, the middle row space is quite close between the two.
Alright, so the middle row of the XUV700, clearly the best seats in the car, I feel, because nice amount of cushioning, you get a good amount of room as well, leg space not an issue, some space under the seats as well.
Yep, spacious for sure, but what I didn't like is that the windows are so big and there's no sunshade, so it's letting so much light and so much heat into the cabin. I mean, the AC is working overtime just to keep us cool.
What I would have liked is blower controls for the middle row. The third row gets them, but I think because of the heat, I'm feeling it a bit more, and the panoramic sunroof. Great addition, looks very premium,
Absolutely.
but very hot in here.
Yeah. What's also nice is the boss seat function. You can just pull a lever and push the seat forward to extend more knee and leg room for the passenger.
So yeah, lot of positives. I think it's time we check out the N once again.
Let's go. So the second row of the Scorpio N, I mean, you're seated in a theatre-like position, slightly higher than the front, and good view out.
What do you think of the window lines?
It's low, it's pretty much, I think, at par with the XUV. It's quite low, but again, a large window, no sunshade. It should have been there, at least at this price point.
Other bit I like is blower controls for the middle row. That car does not get it. And space is, I think, round about the same. You have a decent amount of leg room. Not too bad in terms of overall room.
The lumbar support, I think, is a bit excessive in this car compared to that. So I think overall the XUV seat is a little more comfortable.
Yeah.
But having said that, both are pretty much at par. It's not a huge difference between the two.
The XUV then comes out on top in terms of space and comfort, but what about driving?
Right off the bat, the XUV700, it just feels so much more refined and car-like to drive.
Yeah, exactly. Compared to both of them, this is like completely different.
Absolutely, and I think all that boils down to its monocoque construction. Of course, the whole center of gravity is a lot lower, so you're rolling a bit lesser, and the ride also feels a lot flatter. There are no body movements like in the other two cars.
I agree, it is quite composed. And again, the driving position is very much car-like.
Yeah.
And in the corners, what do you think?
Pretty confident, no? Of course, I mean, it's well controlled and
In comparison to those,
in comparison to those, absolutely.
miles ahead.
Miles ahead.
Now this XUV700 gets the same 2.2 liter diesel engine but in a higher state of tune, 185 horsepower, and you can definitely feel that on the go, yeah?
Absolutely, it feels a lot lighter on its feet. It feels a lot more responsive and a lot more eager in comparison. And also in this particular car, power is going to the front wheels, whereas in the two Scorpios, it's going to the rear wheels. So even that makes a difference. You can feel the car pulling you ahead rather than pushing you from the back.
And the XUV proves that in its performance times.
Now the engine might be similar to the Scorpio in higher state of tune, of course, but what the XUV also gets, one of its biggest calling cards, ADAS.
Yeah, I think ADAS, see, as we speak. ADAS is sort of the buzzword today in the industry. Everyone wants to have this feature in their car. And I mean, it is definitely, it could be a lifesaver in certain scenarios for sure. But for someone who has been driving the car for many years, an experienced driver will certainly want these features to be turned off, as it often intrudes with their driving style. So at least for me, personally, I prefer to keep it off. I would prefer a version without ADAS but with the other features. What do you think?
Yeah, I think the same, because I think a lot of it boils down to the conditions of our roads. You know, when you don't have well marked, well paved roads, then the ADAS does get a bit confusing, and it can intrude, like you said. It does cut in your driving style, and that does take some time to get used to. So yeah, I totally agree with a version without the ADAS. I think that would be a lot better. But yeah, like you said, it is the talk of the town, and if you want an SUV upwards of the 20 lakh price tag, it has to be part of it.
Yeah.
Okay, so the XUV performs better, it drives better. What about ride quality?
Yeah, for sure. As we spoke, because of its monocoque construction, its ride quality is much nicer than the Scorpios. There are less movements in the cabin. You're riding a lot flatter, and overall, it takes on these bad roads quite well. So it does exude that sense of toughness while taking on the bad roads. And overall, I mean, it certainly is the best of both worlds. It's tough, it feels tough, and it rides in a much compliant, a much absorbent manner. So I think full marks to XUV.
Yeah, I agree, full marks. When you're talking stuff that is not paved with tarmac, bad roads, it takes well, I agree. But when you really have to go out of the way, take the long way home, I think the Scorpio N then really shines through, because that ladder frame, that that toughness is just very much, it just shows and shines through.
Agree. But apart from ADAS, I mean, this car has that wowing effect as soon as you enter the cabin. Not only is the upholstery lighter, but these two screens, like, sort of a Mercedes GLS sort of layout, it definitely has a real wowing effect, and so does the panoramic sunroof.
I agree. I mean, panoramic sunroof in an expensive SUV is a given, it has to be there. But yeah, the Mercedes-like layout is very, very attractive, and I like the way the dials work. They are dimmed only to a point where you see your speed. And all those things make it look good. What I would have liked is a better resolution for the camera. It's just a bit too laggy for my taste. And yeah, but overall the design, the fit finish, I think it has that premium appeal that buyers want.
Certainly, but to be fair, even the Scorpio N's camera is not the best in the market, and probably this is a little better than that. So in comparison, I mean, it is still the XUV700, which is much better in terms of spec and equipment.
Yeah, exactly. So if you want something that is a bit more modern, if you like all the sci-fi features, if you like the tech in it, then definitely this is the car for you.
While the XUV does offer a fair bit in terms of equipment, the Scorpio isn't too far behind.
Once again, jumping into the Scorpio N after the XUV700, and what a difference it is.
I know, it just suddenly you feel like you're in a proper SUV. We talked about the car-like driving position in that car, but in this you feel like you're driving the SUV because you can see the bonnet right up till the end. It's a much more raked windscreen, and it just has that tough feeling.
Yeah, and the seats are seated so high, it's like king of the road like driving position. It gives you that sort of invincibility from behind the wheel, isn't it?
Exactly, that is what Scorpios are known for, to be bullish on the road, and that is that feeling that comes when you drive this. But in terms of engine refinement, not a problem at all. Performance, yes, it is a bit short compared to the XUV, but not a big difference.
Yeah, no, not a big difference. It's just a few horsepower here and there, but the main difference I think is that push you get from the back, because it's rear wheel drive, whereas that one is front wheel drive, so it's pulling you forward. So I think on hilly sections, people would prefer a Scorpio to an XUV just for that bit of traction. Yes.
Exactly. But in the corners, the Scorpio traits are back. You have that top heavy feel. It does roll about a fair bit as well. So yeah, definitely feels like an SUV in the corners.
And while taking bad roads, the Scorpio does move quite a bit. For sure, it gives you that feeling of toughness and feeling of you can go over any sort of road surface. But the body movements are quite pronounced in this car.
I agree. That whole ladder frame chassis, that is what comes through, and it can only do so much because they've managed to counter a lot of it. If you remember the Classic, that moves around a lot in comparison. This is a lot more flatter. But of course, when you sit in the XUV, things are a lot different from this car. This thing still moves around. But yes, like you said, when you see a really bad patch of road, you have a lot more confidence in this than you would in the XUV.
And when you see a small speed breaker, you don't slow down.
Yeah, it's almost like you don't see it.
So the XUV700 is a lot more car-like to drive, and the Scorpio, it's a lot better than before. But is it close to being car-like to drive? Like, how about the controls? Are they light enough, or?
To be honest, yeah, they are. I mean, the steering is quite light. The gearbox, the clutch especially, is very, very easy. And I don't think this will be a problem in even day-to-day traffic situations, or if you're stuck anywhere. It is absolutely effortless. And this is all relative to what the older Scorpio was. So, like you said, it's grown leaps and bounds. Then it's definitely that. But compared to the XUV, yeah, this is a bit more heavy in terms of the steering weight or even the clutch for that matter. Whereas that feels a lot more effortless. But this individually in isolation, no problem. Absolutely fine.
And after moving in from the XUV700 to this, the whole orientation and all of these buttons and all feels quite old school, no?
It does. I mean, it does have an air of nostalgia to it with the switches and the dashboard that's way up front and it's flat as well. But it still has those modern touches.
Personally, I prefer the analog dials in any car. It's just so much simpler and easier on the eyes. No fussy animations or orientations. But yeah, I mean, that's carried forward in this car as well. And the touchscreen, I mean, it is feature packed, but it's slow to respond if you compare it to segment standards. You are taking a reverse. The display is quite
poor. It is poor because even in the XUV, I mean, we had complained about that. In this, things are not too different. It still lags a lot. You don't get the most clear visual, and especially when it gets dark, these things really suffer. But I guess that's one of the niggles of the Scorpio. The other one is normal sunroof. I think some owners have complained that a panoramic would have been good. I think this is fine, but well, it's been a Mahindra fest for the past few days. We've driven the Scorpio Classic, the Scorpio N and the XUV700. And to be honest, the Scorpio Classic has its own share of audiences. It has carved out a niche for itself and it is very much a favorite still. But the bigger confusion lies with these two, the Scorpio N and the XUV700. Now, since they are a lot close in terms of pricing, owners are bound to be confused. And yet again, it is one for everyone, because if you want a hardy, tough SUV and if you want something with the go anywhere capability and that Scorpio badge, the N does the job perfectly.
But if you want something which is a little more sophisticated, a little more car-like to drive and a little more comfortable, then it's the XUV700. That's the one for you.
Hey, roll कर roll है clap
ये नीचे ऊपर ही रखते हैं. हाँ, ready?
so ready
Ready खेलेंगे क्या?
okay action ready.
Alexa, who is the big daddy of SUVs?
Here's something I found on the web. According to motorbiscuit.com, the Nissan Armada is the big daddy SUV.
And cut.